You should have probably recorded this banter.
Probably.
I feel like
Banter,
people
banter,
like.
banter.
I feel like people like random. I like random banter. Like.
So yeah, for those that don't know, we were bantering about when we used to sneak in food into movie theaters in our triple XL hoodies and cargo pants. It was an era.
Have you been to anything like a movie theater or a concert this year? Because I haven't, and it's really hitting me because we're hitting a year. Yeah, and, like we both frequent concerts.
Yeah, let's say you and I are concert heads, and like
festival heads.
It's hurting, yo.
And then when the world opens up, we're not even gonna have like U Street, the shit that's literally down the street now. For me, that I just knew I was gonna be drunk as fuck, walking to U Street, walking back, even more drunk. Like it was just gonna be a thing that I did. That's why I moved here.
And here you are, like 9 months into your lease, and it's like, what are we gonna do? It's crazy, man. I don't know how outside is gonna open up again, or when it's gonna open up again.
And meanwhile, you see Australia. You saw that big festival that they just had. You know, because they've been going into 9 months without having a case at all, so they're able to safely do shit like that.
Fucking Wuhan, where this shit started, had a huge festival.
Like, and I'm just watching this shit like real, like that SpongeBob meme. I'm Squidward inside the house watching Patrick and SpongeBob motherfucking play, bitch.
Yo, we are Squidward.
And I can't even go to there to be at the festival because I'm a fucking American. They're gonna drag my ass, rightfully so. I probably have the shit just because I'm a fucking American.
They won't let us in. Yeah, it's crazy.
What?
The devaluation of an American passport is wild. It used to be worth so much to have one of those things.
And it's like, I would love it so much more if I wasn't an American. But it's like, I low-key love it because fuck us and fuck this place.
Yeah. But it was nice to travel.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it was nice to be the nigga like, oh, American stamp. Like, I literally found my passport last week and it was like, all right, bet. This shit doesn't like fucking expire until like 2-3 more years. So it was like, but
and you know what's interesting is Trump made it much harder to get a passport too, and who knows if Biden's gonna fix that shit. So as a result, a lot of people are gonna lose their passports this year and not gonna know about it. And then when they want to go somewhere next year, it's gonna be, you know,
like, sorry,
they're screwed.
Sorry, sis. Yep. And everything's gonna be backed up because as soon as everything does open back up, everyone's gonna be trying to renew their licenses, renew their passports, renew every fucking thing, especially to get the fuck out of here. So.
Oh yeah, mass exodus. But you know, it is what it is. But hey, guys.
Hey, man. Obviously, we're feeling very existential right now, but I feel like it's on brand for the topic.
Exactly. We're back with another week, another hip hop podcast. Hope y'all are well. As always, I'm Mayron. I'm here with Bria, the illustrious Bria. You know, who's feeling a little blue. And
the depressed Bria. The business bitch is very sad today, but it's all right.
It's all right. We allowed to be sad.
Yeah, if you hear lighter flicks, mind your business. That's all I'm saying.
And you know what? It's the middle of a pandemic and we're in the middle of winter, so I think everyone's feeling a little bit, and you know, appropriately so. We have decided to talk about a man today that I think embodies those melancholy feelings all too well.
Perfect.
The wonder that is Frank Ocean, that we've longed to do an evolution of for a long time, and we've decided, why not now? You know, it seems like perfect timing.
Right.
I don't know. Frank is like, he's our artist, right? Like every generation has an artist. You know, Frank was born in 87, and we're a little younger than him, but not like significantly.
Right.
And, you know, we didn't have, like, we love Prince and we love Michael Jackson and we love these amazing songwriters who came before and sort of the legacy, but we didn't have a guy. And for some people, Drake is their guy. But I think for the artsy crowd of, you know, it is what it is. You look at
it. I know. And you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
For some people, Drake is that guy.
The face that I just made, y'all, was...
Yeah, she was unhappy. But I was like, listen, I'm just telling people what it is.
And it's the truth, though. Like, the Spotify rap just came out, and it blows my mind every year how many people still have Drake as their number one.
I don't know what they're listening to.
Me neither. And I low-key want to hit them up for like and give them suggestions and help, but I try so hard not to be that nigga in music.
We have multiple playlists across multiple streaming platforms. Bria has 4 or 5 on Spotify that you can listen to. We have plenty on SoundCloud you can also listen to. If you guys need new music, we got you.
Period. I just don't. It blow, and it's like one certain demographic of people that just like are Drake stans. Cool, like praise your king.
Shout out to Stacey, man. I'm he loves him. He loves him.
I have so many friends. I have so many friends that like Drake. But then there are people who's like, in no shade, once again, whose music taste I genuinely respect. And then Drake being their top 3, and I'm like, bro, and if I was you, again, no shade, I wouldn't even post at this. Like, I feel like I shouldn't respect your taste, but I'm gonna shut up. It's fine.
The thing is, okay, the point I was making.
Yes, Frank Ocean is hands down our prince. Like,
the point I was making is that for some people in this generation, it's Drake, but I think especially for the early 90s, it's us and Frank Ocean.
I was gonna say Frank is our certified lover boy, which is fucking hilarious. I didn't even mean to make that connection because that's the name of Drake's new album.
Yeah, it is.
I didn't even mean that, but I was literally about to say, I'm like, Frank is like our, for like certified sad boy, certified lover boy. But that can definitely be said for Drake. But Frank Ocean is ours.
Exactly, and I think for a lot of early 90s babies, especially, Frank is an inflection point of music, right? So many pivotal times in our lives, especially that early 20s part where everyone's making so many mistakes and having so many experience. Frank was the soundtrack to, right?
Yeah.
I think particularly, and I guess we could start at wherever, but like particularly Channel Orange. When I think about Channel Orange, I think about my early 20s, and I think about the things I was doing well and think about the things that I wasn't doing so well, and sort of the cacophony and mess of it all. You know what I'm saying? Like that shit, when it was a mess, like Frank was playing and he was in the background. But I think that's my first impression when I hear the name Frank Ocean. How about on your side?
First impression when you hear Frank Ocean.
I say the name, what do you think of?
The real fake deep meta me, which I do feel like represents a lot of kind of Frank Ocean stans and fans, is like, that nigga says all the shit that I wanted to say but haven't been able to say, and he says it way better than I've ever been able to say. And like, not the shit that's glorified for the most part in the music industry, especially when it comes from somebody like him, like a cishet black man. Like I'm sad. I'm really sad. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. I kind of don't want to be here. I feel like people don't understand me. I feel like people don't see me. Like, all of that is like, when I think of Frank Ocean, I think of like, yeah, that nigga makes my suicidal tendencies sound pretty. He makes my suicidal fetishism poetry. And you know, and you know, it's funny, I was thinking about like what I wanted to say about Frank Ocean in preparation for this episode. And it was funny because I was talking to a leg of mine, and he was talking about how he didn't and he was talking about how he like didn't fuck with Tyler the Creator's music. And I was just like, bruh, what? Like, you know, okay, the face he made. Yeah, that. Like, you know, Tyler the Creator's one of my favorite artists. And I feel like at this point people know that. So he was like, yeah, like I never really fucked with Tyler. He was always on that like devil shit. That he's like, what was that shit? Kill people, fuck shit, burn, whatever. Like, I just never really connected with that. And I'm like, that's real. And I wish more people that didn't fuck with Tyler would say that it didn't feel connected with what he was saying, rather than he wasn't a good artist and didn't make good music, because that's not the case. And I was like, I feel that actually, because that's, you know, that's one of the reasons why I feel like a lot of people, all of Tyler's fans, connected to him, because he served he served as a representation, or like a subgroup of the black community that didn't feel represented. You know what I'm saying? Same thing that Eminem did with Stan and shit like that. For the emo ass white boys that wanted to hear hippity hop or whatever the fuck, like Tyler represented a subgroup the same way that Pharrell did. And I feel like that's why people like Pharrell's the one that kind of really gave us Tyler. People are still so shocked to learn that. They are still, because I was talking to my leg about it. He was like, it was Pharrell. It was fucking Pharrell.
Yeah, that doesn't seem natural to you? Like Pharrell.
Okay, exactly. But, you know, and Pharrell just served another like representation of like a certain black community, with black men that didn't feel like they were represented. Tyler did the same motherfucking thing, and I feel like Frank Ocean did the same motherfucking thing. For the niggas that are niggas and still sad, for the niggas that are niggas and might be a little gay, for the niggas that are niggas that like don't want to be here, that don't want to live, that honestly just like look at the world and just like and question it in a way that like people like them aren't allowed to do. Like, I feel all that representation when I think of Frank Ocean, and honestly in the same regard that like I connected to people like Tyler, which is why I think it's so interesting that they came up more or less in the same way.
I mean, yeah, Tyler is a part of Tyler is part of what brought Frank Ocean to, I think, the forefront of the music industry. He's a big part of it. I think when I hear Frank Ocean, I agree with everything you said. The other thing is like he makes, like you said, he makes your suicide pretty. He also makes like the melancholy charismatic, you know? Like he
made it a personality. Can we talk about how Frank Ocean made Sad Boy a personality?
Exactly. And like that melancholy is thing that I think so many people go through, where it's like the humdrum of life, where you wake up and you're like, I really don't enjoy this monotonous everyday wake up, go to work, or even go to school, whatever your everyday may be. That he made the observation of that melancholy interesting. And he gave you a way to just, like you're saying, describe it in a way that you hadn't thought of before, or not necessarily not even thought of, in a way you hadn't been able to verbalize. And part of Frank Ocean's shtick is that he's not an amazing singer. It's that his singing voice accentuates his writing, right?
He is one of the most perfect artists.
Exactly.
Period.
And so when Frank sings, for me, what I hear is like, all of my problems presented in an imperfect shell, but with the right words, you know?
It's realism, you know? I was like, there's a realism to his music. There's like a reality to his music that I feel like severely lacks in a major portion of the music industry. No shade again, especially when it comes from cis Black men. You know what I'm saying? A part of just, no matter what genre you're in, cis Black man music is like, you know, kind of flexing or imagining a better life for ourselves, because that's not what niggas were given, period. But like, to be a nigga that like lives in that, like, yo, this shit actually fucking sucks. Like, it just sucks, dog. Like, fuck, like, yeah, I get the bitches, yeah, I get the pussy, yeah, I get the ass, yeah, I get the hoes, all this shit, whatever the fuck you want to say, but I still wake up sad. Can I say that?
And I think what Frank does, not just the sadness and the melancholy, he lives in it in a way that I think has a certain amount of balance, right? He's for people who are like, they aren't necessarily about to lose control of their lives. They are just aware that their lives are not in their control.
Period.
Right? And so with that awareness comes some power. And that's, I think, Frank's music to a certain extent is very empowering for people like us, right? People who hadn't been heard before.
People who self-reflect.
Yes, because of that ability to be self-aware and that ability to reflect on things, you have some power that you didn't have before. And like, I didn't want to call like Frank Ocean's music life-changing, but what it did is it gave me a set of tools to grapple with emotions that I hadn't had previously, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, it's not like, oh, Frank Ocean changed my life. Like, you know, that kid in the Travis Scott documentary who's like, Scott.
Yeah.
But it's more so like Frank Ocean helped me understand who I am better.
Facts. But also Frank Ocean kept me from killing myself. And I'm not afraid to, like, say that, you know? And I think that's also important to say, you know what I'm saying? I don't think people really revealed how important Kid Cudi was to so many people's mental health until Pete Davidson was on The Breakfast Club and said, Kid Cudi kept me from killing myself.
That's fair.
And there's so many other people like that. Like,
yeah, that's
for real.
fair. I think there's a lot of people like that for sure. And I think
Frank Ocean's one of those people.
Yeah, and I
want to give him that.
There's power in both those things, that he can be both those things at once, you know? He can be someone that gives you the ability to be like self-aware of what's going on around you and sort of lead you out of a dark place at the same time, right? Because there's something to be said for showing you the darkness and showing you how to be comfortable in it. You know, as opposed to trying to force you into some sort of light that you don't even want to go to. And I think that is Frank's like superpower, you know, when it comes to writing. It's showing you the cave that you're in. Right.
And it's just like, whether you get out of it or not, it's just like the recognition that you're there, sis. There are a lot of niggas that are delusioned, and like, we're just not going to do that.
Exactly.
We're here.
Exactly. And I guess for a lot of people that starts with Nostalgia Ultra, right? Like, he has music from before then. We'll get into that a little later. But I think a lot of that starts with Nostalgia Ultra, and it's a smaller, you know, project. It's only like 13 songs, but it's emblematic of everything that Frank is, right? Like songs like We All Try, Songs for Women, Love Crime, Swim Good, Novocaine. Those things sort of are very much a great description of Frank Ocean. To this day, it's what I would give to somebody.
I was gonna say, and I mean, obviously I feel like at this point, but there's a difference between like I think there's just a difference, and it's not like anything to like argue about or be shady about, but I think that it matters when you recognize when you discovered an artist. Because like, yeah, Channel Orange was a project that really like made Frank Ocean who he kind of is
today. Blew him up,
Yeah. But like, Nostalgia Ultra is the Frank Ocean project. Like it is.
It's who he is, right?
It's who he is completely, and like, and that's where like some stuff like the relatability comes from. Because I followed Frank Ocean on Tumblr before he dropped Nostalgia Ultra. Like him and Crit and Karuchi. Funny enough, him, Crit, and Karuchi were my favorite Tumblr followers. Because all Karuchi posted was weed and food. Crit all for real.
Yeah.
Like she only posted weed and food. And like me, and then like Crit, like all the background of his like music, the inspiration for the music, all the background of his grandmother and shit like that. And then Frank Ocean would just talk to us, like we were normal ass, right? Like he was a regular ass.
Yeah, like he was an artsy dude that just liked to speak. Yeah.
And all he did was tease Nostalgia Ultra on Tumblr for months.
I'm about to say it took like almost a year. I remember, right?
Months. And I remember following this person who at this point had no identity to me other than being like an extension of them crazy niggas that like raged on Future. But even then, they weren't even like a name yet. They were those crazy niggas on Tumblr that raged.
They weren't a cohesive group. You're like, no, they're like, oh yeah, all those dudes, they're just
they did shit and they looked cool.
Exactly. Everything was aesthetic for them. Everything was aesthetic.
Nobody understood it. No, and it's Tumblr. So as long as you fucking look cool, who the fuck cares? Yeah. So like that was just Tumblr culture. It's like he's the sad boy of the wild boy group. And of course, like, sad boy bitches like me connected to it. And this nigga Lily, and that's why I love him so much, because he just on Tumblr for like you said, almost a year. Just like, yeah, this shit I'm about to drop. Yeah, I'm really working on this music. And then he dropped a snippet. The first thing, and I will say that, niggas can argue against me as much as they want to because I was motherfucking there. The first thing he ever dropped of Nostalgia Ultra, period, was like a small snippet of Novocaine. And I remember like hearing it and being like, what the fuck is this? And I played it over and over and over and over. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but it's gonna fuck everyone up. And I remember calling my boyfriend like, I know you don't care. I know I talk about Tumblr all the motherfucking time, you never listen. I know I talk about these niggas all the time and you don't listen. There is this song that when it drops, it is going to change. Whatever the fuck it is he's trying to do, he's gonna get it when he drops this motherfucking song. And he dropped that motherfucking song, and it like literally, like, and I remember that nigga hit my phone, like he called me, was like, bruh, like I just heard this song at a party that you played for me a year and a half ago. This is what? It
changed a lot of the way people interact with music, and I think it created a whole new genre, right? I think there's a lot of things are derivative of Frank Ocean, and I'm not
good
sure.
And bad. Good and bad.
Good and bad. No, for sure. There's a lot of crappy imitations of what Frank did with Novocaine and Slim Good, right?
Yeah. I also just feel like he opened a level of personality and like personability between him and his fans that other artists aren't able to reciprocate.
Well, he did.
That he is no longer able to reciprocate.
Yeah, but to say he did, and I think he grew out of that to a certain extent, which we'll get
to. But I feel like we expect that from him, and it's because of how it started as far as how he gave us his art. He gave us his art so personally in the beginning.
Right. So exactly, and I think one of the things I wanted to hit on that you brought up is when I first saw Novocaine and Slim Good, and like the videos on YouTube that came out like early as well, they kind of changed the way I think a lot of the generation that makes music now and the generation before it, to a certain extent, a micro generation of like 5 years or whatever, thinks about visually how to present their music and what they're going to present themselves as, right? I think a lot of people are Frank clones to a certain extent. They're just bad imitations, right? I think people often credit Kanye with like 808s and Heartbreaks creating a whole movement off of that, and I think there's a lot of validity there. But I think the other thing is a lot of people like Weekends and stuff like that really kind of derive from Frank, They take a lot of their personality and a lot of that mysteriousness that Frank had, and they kind of try to repackage and repurpose it. The difference is Frank did it while still, like you're saying, being a personable dude. He still was down to earth. He still talked to us.
Yeah, like he was on the same level that we are. Just like, hey, like, and amongst my confusion, I did this to help me better figure out my confusion.
He was like a cool friend who hadn't found himself
yet. Exactly, and that's why I 100% agree with what you're saying, and I feel like he inspired a lot of these artists to be just like, whoa,
maybe I can, friend who can't,
you know what I'm saying? And just, I mean, period. Just like, or I can be this honest as long as I make it sound sexy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing. Frank Ocean makes sexy music, right? To a certain extent.
Sexy sad boy music. Like, sex is not just a one lateral thing, and I feel like we're learning and growing at that, like, all the time, and a lot of that is attributed to porn, unfortunately. Everybody is so open to the idea of sex, but nobody knows how to have sex because of porn, and it's so weird.
And they're not sultry to a certain extent, right?
You know what I'm saying?
They don't know how to, like, sort of. Frank Ocean, like, it sounds, I guess, a little weird, but not really. He caresses you with music, you know? It's like, it's very soft, and it's inviting. It holds you,
and it still feels toxic. Which, I'm sorry, at this point, it's important in a lot of music, especially when it comes from a cis black man. That's why we like Run Fire so much and Ty Dolla $ign so much. Like, you gotta have a level of toxicity, even though you're still loving these hoes.
Exactly, and it feels toxic, but it feels toxic in an emotionally honest way. It's like, it's like this is not toxicity for the sake of me being toxic. This is actually how I am.
I'm dark and I'm trying to heal.
Yeah, this is actually how I am. This isn't a front. This isn't a fake. This isn't a ploy to try and, like, bring you in. No. This is just who I am. Take it or leave it.
Period.
Right? And, you know, there's good and bad about that as well, because, again, it contributes to a culture that may not be the best for, you know, healthy relationships for everybody, but it's real and it's honest, you know?
Right.
And, like, looking at, like, even the songs on here, like, obviously, you know, Novocaine and Swim Good are, like, the standouts. Everyone loves them, da-da-da-da. But, like, there's so many, like, hits. Like, I go through, I think, every couple of months a new favorite song, right? Sometimes I think it's Dust, like the, and then, but he also has the Electric Feel song on here.
I was gonna say, Electric Feels, American Wedding, like, and he's somebody that, like, covered or sampled a lot of songs. I was like, what the? This nigga was high as shit, heard this shit, and was like, I'm about to redo this shit.
I'm about to, exactly.
Like, and that's why I like shit, like, like, There Will Be Tears, like.
I mean, we all try.
Strawberry Swing,
yeah.
Who has ever covered a U2 song and made it cool? No one.
Only Frank. And, like, you know, We All Try, I think, is one of his best tracks ever, right? Because it's one of those things that it hits everyone's level, right? Wherever you're at, you can listen to We All Try and you can understand and get something and take something from it. So, you know, like, some people...
Niggas be trying. That's what
it's basically a song about that, right? And it's just super honest, and it's just like, he says the things that are like everyone else is saying, but again, he says them in a better way.
Yep.
And it sounds good. Sonically,
I think it not sound ugly. And that's so much, especially about just, like, being an American. It's like, hide all the ugly things, bury all the ugly things, fix all the ugly things, like, get rid of them. And we can't be ugly. Like, you know what I'm saying? And Frank is like, I'm ugly as shit, my nigga, and you still want to fuck me. That's good.
And then the other thing I wanted to point out about this and the aesthetic is, like, this is where you and I aren't first introduced, but I think the world is first introduced to, like, the idea of where he does video game drops as, like, his, you know, beginning. So, like, Street Fighter and stuff like GoldenEye, Soul Calibur, like, all throughout the album, right? And then his love of cars, like his love of classic cars, and sort of having that on the cover, and sort of using that particular aesthetic that I think a lot of fuckboys sort of adapted as well, and, like, brought into their own, you know, way of presenting themselves. And he was kind of, like, not the first, but he did it the best, right? Early.
And him and Currency.
Yes.
They got the title.
Yeah, he did it the best early, right? Where it's like, how do I incorporate these things that I grew up with and grew up on as little snippets, as little Easter eggs in my music that'll bring you in. And so that all starts with Nostalgia Ultra.
Yes.
But then we go, I think, and we travel to Channel Orange.
Okay. I was like, do we go back or forth?
Let's go back then. Let's go back to Lonnie Bo then. And Frank has a history, right? Frank is not some unknown to the music industry. And it's important to note that because it shapes so much of who he is and how he thinks about music.
And I think his trajectory as an artist. And I think that's one of the few things that separates him from Odd Future. And it's like, I don't think it's wrong to associate him with Odd Future, but, like, he was a nigga that had the deal and had the bag. He was just kind of trying to find himself as Frank Ocean, but he was like somebody like Miguel. And that's one of the reasons why I praise Miguel so much. The only reason why I knew Miguel as an artist is because he was a songwriter for one of my favorite artists at the time, which was Neo. Frank Ocean was the same way.
Shouts to the Ninja Turtle. I love Neo, but he is what he is, you know? Raphael.
Anyway, but yeah, but like, and that is how I discovered Frank Ocean. And I mean, and I think thinking about you was Channel Orange, right? So we'll talk about that when we talk about Channel Orange. But I think that's important to remember is that like, there's no cute way to say that. I don't know.
You don't gotta be cute. Just say it.
For people that care about stuff like that, then discover artists and find artists and like Google them and get deeper into their bag. For a lot of people that discovered Frank Ocean, we discovered Frank Ocean as being like a songwriter on Def Jam at that, or was it Rock Nation Def Jam?
It was Def Jam, right?
Which is where he stayed, and I just think that's really important to note because that's completely the trajectory of him as an artist. That's why you hear him on Beyonce. That's why you hear him on Jay-Z. He was that before he was Frank Ocean.
Exactly.
But when he became Frank Ocean, it was like, oh, okay, I trust you. So immediately you get Jay-Z and Beyonce. There actually hasn't been an album that Jay-Z or Beyonce has dropped since Frank Ocean blew up, which I would say came from Channel Orange, that he hasn't had a writing, singing, or production credit on.
Exactly, right? And so
that's
yeah,
important.
It's important to understand that. So with that understanding, what the Lonnie Bo collection is essentially.
And I like that you say Lonnie Bo because
is it not Bo?
And I
could be wrong.
I grew up on it being Lonnie Brewer.
I always thought like it was French and like.
Same, but like how like faux is faux the way faux is faux,
like pho versus faux.
Yeah,
listen,
like
if I'm wrong,
the AUX. No, I'm just saying. Yeah. And it's like, and then every time people pronounce it, I like things that where people don't really know the pronunciation of it. So when they say it, they're kind of like Lonnie Brewer.
Yeah,
like those things make me so happy. Yeah. And like Lonnie Brewer is one of those things. Like I call it Lonnie Brewer. I'm completely understanding that I might be wrong.
Right, and
Bro, a brew.
Somebody tell us what it's called. But anyways, the name of the album is the Lonnie Bro Brew Collection, and it's basically a collection of songs that are reference tracks, right? It's mostly rough tracks that Frank was writing for other people, and it sounds like it because when you listen to this and you see like the songs in it, you're kind of confused because it's like this doesn't make any sense given the Frank Ocean that I know and love. Right. But it's important to understand and listen to because it gives you a couple more moments that you didn't know you'd expect and you didn't know how to take, and you get to feel it as he grows. And again, another important part that you already brought up was he had the bag initially, right?
You know what I'm saying? Yes. And I was gonna say, I feel like it gives a lot of context to who he is as an artist, and why he is so like ambiguous and mysterious.
Exactly.
In his own artistry, partially because he had to be, because he represented however many artists, we don't know, like,
and because he was so used to wearing different faces, which is kind of the point that I was getting to, right? Is because he was a songwriter and because he was forced to not forced, he chose this job, but because his job was to sort of put on a different face every time he wrote music, you can hear that in these tracks, right? And that's kind of the beautiful thing about it, is you can hear him trying on these different faces and different ideas that aren't for him, but it's cool to see someone who's a genius experiment. And that's one of the best things about this mixtape. So it's a lot of production by these people called MIDI Mafia, who used to be huge, right? And I love their production style, especially at the time. And I was so like excited when we found this tape initially. This was years ago, and I was like, wow, like MIDI Mafia has all this like these cool songs and these cool sounds that you didn't expect. And looking back on it. Looking at this, looking at the album cover, it's the same thing. It's a car. Looking at sort of like the way he structured a lot of these songs, you could see the guy he was going to become, right?
Exactly.
You could see him getting there.
Right, and that was the association that I made from the Lonnie Brewer project to Nostalgia Ultra. Is like, I followed him right before Nostalgia Ultra dropped, so like the only kind of reference that I had, which I didn't really dig deep into until Nostalgia Ultra came out, was like, oh, he's like developing a series with this. Like he had a different car on Lonnie Brew, now he has his car on Nostalgia Ultra, whatever. So even when Channel Orange dropped, I was like, okay, car. And it was nothing but orange.
Where's
and
I was
like,
the car?
Exactly. So like, I feel like all of it. And I remember being on Twitter. Remember when Frank Ocean was on Twitter?
Yeah.
Remember his beef? Remember his beef with Chris Brown?
Yeah. It's so unusual.
To me, it made sense and it was so perfect. Because if there's a nigga that threatened Chris Brown's throne, it was a nigga that did R&B better than Frank Ocean.
He wrote for everybody that was important.
It was motherfucking Frank Ocean, bitch. So Chris Brown was coked up like, oh, nah, sis. And then Frank Ocean, like, with a little queer ass, like, I ain't no bitch, sis. We can square up. Let's get with it. Like, and I remember watching this and like, yes! fire
I'm so
emoji.
confused. I was like, why is the dude that made Yo and the guy that made Thinking About You fighting?
I loved it. Because I was a Chris Brown stan, but you grow up, and when you become a man, you get rid of childish things.
Hey, in high school, every girl I knew was a Chris Brown stan, so it was okay. It's fine.
Okay, but then this nigga Frank was like, nah. No.
It was a weird time on Twitter.
It was just a beautiful. I love Twitter, and I love Nalia. Shout out to Nalia. She brings it up all the time. Like when Twitter was just like a free for all, like the Sierra and Rihanna Twitter.
Really, just
the Tiana Taylor Rihanna Twitter beef, like, bruh, it was a time.
That was when Rihanna used to be messy, and
she used to drag.
She used to actually be on Twitter and not have her like representative.
She used to drag these niggas. I'll never forget the way she dragged Karuchi, and Karuchi didn't even do anything. Like she just be like, bitch, you can get it, 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 because I'm about to be that bitch who can suck my dick. That's all I respect it.
It was a very different time, but it does fit perfectly into the story though, because it's like Frank is making money at this early time. He's not like Tyler. He's not broke, and like,
right. And he doesn't wake up one day and just have a fucking motherfucking 6-figure check because Pharrell signed him. He was kind of already in this.
And he understands kind of how it works, and he's been burned, and he's seen people be hurt, and he's already cautious, right?
Exactly.
So he's hanging out with these boisterous guys and Tyler, and Earl's not necessarily boisterous, but at the time he was louder, yes. And it's just this crew that's
hot ass beat clap. Hot ass beat clap.
Exactly.
Shout out to hot ass beat clap, my nigga. That was
this crew that's just loud, and Frank decidedly
and
not
they're
that.
honest though, yeah. Right? But they were honest.
They were,
and they also were most of them in the closet.
That's something I want to get to, and I want to have you talk about it, and not me, because I'm like I don't really know what to say, but like because that's actually really important to point out though. Part of the reason Frank is so mysterious is because he had to hide his sexuality, or he felt he had to hide his sexuality, right? And so many of the great songwriters in our past, and especially in the Black lineage, have been gay as well, right? And they have also had to a certain extent hide it.
It's not even in music, just Black culture. Like I always think of niggas like James, like Baldwin and Basquiat, all these niggas gonna be mad, but allegedly Malcolm X. Like a lot of these niggas was gay, but felt like they had to hide it.
And that natural instinct to hide definitely plays into Frank and who he is, and from our perspective, right? Like, I don't know the guy personally. I'm not going to try and say I'm speaking for him.
But his level of mysteriousness is like, what is his deal?
Yeah, exactly, and exactly, right? It's like you can tell that he had to carry that with him, and because he knew how the music industry worked, he knew what he had to keep quiet and what he didn't.
Exactly.
And I think that was important for his growth, and I think also important for Tyler's growth to a certain extent, right? Yeah. I think the way Tyler managed hiding that was manifested itself very differently than the way Frank hid it. And
oh my God, yes.
I mean, and we can talk about like Tyler's sort of growth and into who he is and sort of accepting who he is, but
it just manifested so differently. But I feel like that's really important to like recognize as far as like Tyler and Frank's like acceptability. Right. Like that's Tyler's manifestation of it was completely different than Frank's. Frank was way more palatable, way more artistic, way more poetic, way more like understandable.
But here's two homies, right, that came up kind of together who knew about each other. Like they knew about each other. And Frank, I'm sure, was part of that conversation where Frank just like, listen, I know how this works. We're here. We got to be careful. Like there's no way Frank's not looking out from that perspective.
And not even just Tyler. So I feel like Steve Lacy too.
Steve Lacy's such an interesting dude.
Love him.
Great music. Interesting dude.
Interesting, problematic sometimes, but who isn't in that group?
I mean, listen, other than Sid, like Sid is the.
And of course, Studsy Sid would mind her motherfucking business, because why not? Her essence, her being, her living is.
She's chilling.
It riles niggas up enough. Exactly. Yeah. She's like, I'm coolin', but I love it. Like, I love all these gay cis men, just like Black men, just like, okay, let's figure it out. Let me figure out the best way to suck dick and not piss everyone off. It's amazing to watch them figure that out.
That's Frank's backdrop, right? So his backdrop is this Lonnie Bro collection where he's making this really beautiful music with MIDI Mafia. He's making songs that may not be hits yet, but he's working things out and he's figuring stuff out. He's getting his feet wet, He's feeling. Yeah. And so here we are, we get through that, we get through, you know, his initial like, hey, here's Nostalgia Ultra. And first of all, before we move on, Nostalgia Ultra is such an amazing name, right? I cannot think of a better name than Nostalgia Ultra, right? Especially for the time it came out in.
Yes.
The way people were trying to capitalize on 90s culture, much like they are today, but even more so back then. And it's that
he's
name,
one of the people that definitely popularized it.
For sure. It encapsulates so much about what we like about that album, right? It's
what
the melancholy.
It's a miss. Like, we want this back.
Exactly.
Like, the elusiveness of kind of everything he kind of does.
It's so hard to get it back, you know? And this it's like catching water. It's like, you know, bottling up smoke. It doesn't work, you know? And so that was really, I think, wonderfully named. And then we get Channel Orange, which I think, like you're saying, is sort of his breakout project. And the reason I think we get Channel Orange is because Thinking About You, right? Like, that song kind of defines Frank Ocean's hit career. If I ask like 10 people to name a Frank Ocean song, that'll be the Frank Ocean song they all name.
And if I'm not mistaken, because this is what I wanted to bring up, is a lot of trouble that he ended up getting in as the progression of his career got a lot bigger, is because some of the songs that he had been commissioned or paid or asked to write songs for, he would kind of take back.
For himself, yeah.
Was Thinking About You one of those songs?
I thought so.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it is. I think it was, what's her name? Was it Melanie Fiona? It was another female singer that she took a song from. It was Bridget Kelly. I'm gonna Google
Bridget Kelly, really?
It was Bridget Kelly. I'm gonna Google it right now. And I don't only remember that because she was like on Love and Hip Hop or something like that. It was one of those like artists, like they were a black artist. They were very new. They were just
interesting because Thinking About You was also a song by Radiohead a long time ago, and Frank Ocean does draw a lot of inspiration from Radiohead. But yes, originally to be featured on Bridget Kelly's debut album.
Yep.
Ocean released his original version of the track for free on his Tumblr in 2011.
Tumblr, okay.
In 2012 of May, it was released on iTunes. And Kelly would later release her own version of a track entitled Thinking About Forever.
My mind! That's what I just Googled it to make sure, and I was like, yeah, that's exactly. And I remember being like, ooh, because then she said, she was very open and honest and being like, I know there's a like popular version of the song that's circulating in the undergrounds, but like, this is my song. It's mine. But like, and I remember hearing it, and actually wasn't bad.
Bridget Kelly was actually pretty nice about it. She says, now that push has come to shove, we're going to let the song have a life of its own. I think it's an amazing, well-written record. Frank Ocean is incredibly talented. I will never say anything against that. But at the same time, you know, he's going to do what he wants to do. He's an artist as well. So shout out to Bridget Kelly for being real on that.
Eventually. In the beginning, she was upset.
Yeah, but
niggas couldn't argue that his rendition was the better one. And that, like, you know, because and it's not saying that Bridget Kelly's was bad or anything like that. It was great. She's a great singer. She's a phenomenal singer.
It just fits Frank, right? If Frank is going to have a hit, that's going to be
his. You know? Exactly.
That's his voice. So that song comes out, and, you know, everyone immediately gravitates toward it, and people love it, and it's kind of, I think it's like got to be one of the most covered songs by YouTube artists ever.
Yes,
you know?
yep.
Because like every YouTuber has a cover of Think About You.
And there were other artists that honestly became popular and ended up being able to transcend YouTube. The first one that comes to mind is Tori Kelly.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly what I was thinking of. Tori Kelly is famous because of her Think About You cover with the girl. I don't remember the other girl's name, but she was in it as well.
Think About You.
She has somebody next to her in that video. It don't matter. But anyways, so yeah, Tori Kelly like has a career, and she's a great artist because of, I think, her Think About You cover.
Yep.
And so Channel Orange comes out. It's 2012. Now I'm getting to the point where I was referencing earlier, where I think, you know, second year of college, kind of going crazy. Things are out of control. Like, you know, like we don't really, everything's kind of a haze, right? I think a lot of people do this. Second year of college, things are just kind of a haze, and you don't really understand what is happening to you. Like you're kind of an adult, but you're kind of not, and you're kind of, you don't know how to feel, and you're feeling way too many things. It's almost like a second adolescence, in my opinion. Right? I think there's adolescence in the, you know, traditional sense of middle school. Oh, body's changing, but there's something that happens to you, you know, in between 19 and 21 that changes your mind, right?
Yeah.
Which is why, like, I think relationship-wise, like, it's really hard to date in that time, right? It's really hard to like figure out like what relationships are supposed to look like, what's healthy and what's not healthy. And Frank Ocean is the backdrop to that, you know? Mm-hmm. And as a result, I think Frank is perfect for our generation because of that album and the time it came out. Mm-hmm. But I don't know, man. What do you think about Channel Orange? Like, what's your initial?
I mean, I don't know. I was like scrolling through like the
track list
or whatever of it, and I don't know. I mean, one of the things that always sticks in my mind, I think, with Channel Orange is that a lot of people name this as like a perfect album. I think there are very few albums that came out within the past 10, 20 years that are like hip hop, R&B centered that are considered perfect. I honestly think the only other one is like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I can't think of anything else. Like when people consider perfect albums to come from like this subsect of colored folk, it's My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and it's Channel Orange. But I don't know. I mean, I love Channel Orange. I would agree honestly that it is actually perfect. It is actually perfect. And one of the things that I really remember from like the whole stint of when this project came out and everything was that it was like, and you kind of mentioned it earlier, like he's such an artist of our generation. He's such a representation of our generation. And I remember when this album blew up, like certain albums do, it was Grammy nominated. I remember him bombing at the Grammys. I remember him like low-key bombing on SNL. And like not even because he was nerd, like because he was
real, and he's not that guy. He's not a front of the camera guy.
He's not.
And I think so many of us, especially in our generation, who had to become hyper camera sensitive and hyper camera aware as we grew up, kind of felt that, right? Because the cell phone camera came of age with us. Mm-hmm. So we didn't necessarily grow up with the cell phone camera, we grew with it. So we didn't know how to really react and be on camera. We were awkward with the cell phone camera at first because we were learning how to use it. This generation, I think, is much more equipped and, knows what it is.
Their adaptability is completely different than ours.
Because they're born into it.
And I think it's important to say for certain artists that came up within the same time that we did. Because there are certain artists that are allowed to like evade that level of like
scrutiny
attention
in camera,
and just attention, like Beyonce, you know what I'm saying? And like she deserves it first and motherfucking foremost, but she came up with that and she evades it. Like,
also, but she's a little older. She like was famous a little
right. And then there are people like Frank that kind of have to adapt, and they're just like, and they can't. And I mean, and I always think of every time, and not to say she's not a bird, she's not dumb as shit, but every time people drag Summer Walker, I think of her in that same regard. Like she's a person to make the music. She is not a person to ask questions and be in front of the motherfucking camera. She needs to shut the motherfucker up. But
you love Summer, but
I do, and that's the thing. I love her music. And her music gives me a certain level of like validity and like we understand each other in a way that like I feel.
You feel seen. You feel seen with Summers to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
Like, especially her early shit. Not talking about like her London on the Track shit. Her early shit,
like,
I think
you know what I'm saying? I felt the same way with Frank, but also I feel like because, being a woman and being in this time is different. You're not allowed to. And I feel like Frank is one of the few people we drag, but we still kind of give that grace.
Because we know he kind of grew with it just like we grew with it. And we can see ourselves in him, right?
Like he was not fucking with that shit. He was not fucking with that shit.
We can see the awkwardness of it. We can see the not understanding of it. And Frank is a smart dude, and we can tell he's a smart dude. And to see people who you respect and think are smart kind of fail, it brings a new level of authenticity to them.
An understanding of like just certain aspects of the industry is just like, oh wow, I thought this shit was kind of cool and easy, because there's certain people that make it look kind of cool and easy, and it's really like for people that are a certain way, it's just not. Like it's not. People that are cerebral, that like are introverted, it's just not.
And so,
go ahead.
My bad.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, in terms of the actual music, like I think this album offers a lot, right? It offers easily the most listenable album that Frank has ever made, right? You can throw this on whenever, wherever, and kind of be all right. Like there are some deep cuts like Crack Rock and like stuff like that you wouldn't necessarily play everywhere, but I think Pink Matter, anywhere in the world you can play that. Pyramids is a hit, right? That was like another hit from this album.
It inspired so many people, myself included. The first film that I ever wrote and won an award for was inspired by Pyramids.
And then, exactly, right? And then things like Sweet Life and stuff like that, Super Rich Kids, it just hit all the cultural relevant, like, you know, chords. Like, hey, you know, we're in this weird time and the real estate bubble just happened and the economy's to shit and we hate the rich people. And Frank Ocean is talking about basically how, like, a lot of these songs are about like how wasteful and how like disgusting rich people are to a certain extent, you know?
Right.
And just, he hits everything that you want to, again, say, but don't know how to say in that time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what my favorite song of this is. I think Bad Religion might be it.
Ooh. That's interesting.
Because it's just a very quaint way to say, like, if anything brings you to your knees, it's a bad religion. It's such it's a very powerful sentiment, right? That's like poetry right there. It's like, it questions the whole idea of having to pray in the first place. It's like, why should we have to do this, right? Shouldn't God just like help us out? He made us.
Right, exactly. Like if something has to feel this sacrificial, is this something I should devote myself to?
Like, do I have to devote my entire life to the idea of like praying, or can I just, you know, be a person? Yeah. I don't think I've ever heard that question in the mainstream that way before, right?
I feel that.
And I don't think it's ever been done so in such a way that it doesn't feel like that, right? Because I don't think people get that out of that, but, you know.
All right, I'm gonna think about my favorite song. Hold on, give me 2 seconds.
But yeah, I was saying, like, Lost, I think, on this is like, it's one of his more bouncier songs, and by far I think one of the more entertaining ones, right?
Yeah.
I really enjoy just like listening to Lost as I drive, because it's just a nice bouncy summertime song, you know?
Lost used to be one of my favorites, and I just like, Lost is one of those songs which I feel like a lot of songs from the Nostalgia Ultra do for a lot of people. It's like, it just completely transformed me back to a certain place that I used to be. And Lost used to be one of my favorite songs on Channel Orange, and I used to play it at one of my jobs when I was an undergrad. And this white girl on my job, she hated it. She's like, I hate this song. It's so unlike Frank. Like, why would he be this happy? Literally. And I was like, have you listened to this?
Say it's not that happy.
It's literally called Lost. And that was one of the moments where I was like, I hate white women. So Lost was one of my favorite songs to be, like, it was. And I remember just playing it and her hating it. But besides that, Pink Matter, because Andre 3000 was my favorite artist. So to hear that collaboration.
It was cool that he got a Andre feature so early.
Exactly. Like, so early and being like, duh. Like, this is one of the niggas Andre would hear and be like,
sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna do this. Like, right. So that, and then besides that, I think Pilot Jones, actually.
Pilot Jones, I think, is an interesting song, right? Because I think that's a very Tumblr-esque song.
It
is. I think a lot of kids, when I say kids, I mean people who are our age, so like now, but like back then, use Pilot Jones as like a jumping off point for creativity. And
exactly. I was gonna say that's one of the songs I visualized.
Right.
Most
people use it, I think, because it's a very easy entryway into visualization of music, right? Because of the way it's structured, the sounds, even the white noise.
Exactly. Like, the whole intro, like, it's really transportive in a way that I feel like, and Frank Ocean, I feel like, is one of the niggas that also coined, like, just the transportive, like
it draws a scene.
Immersive, yeah.
He scores. He doesn't make movie scores, but he scores movie scenes, right?
Yes.
Right, like he scores movie scenes. Like, I don't feel like his albums are necessarily cinematic in a lot of ways that other artists are, but I feel like each song is an individual scene in a disjoint sort of way. You know what I'm saying? It's not necessarily hugely thematic in one way through, but it's like, oh, this could be for this, and this could be for this. It's sort of have you ever heard of like non-chronological storytelling? Like where they jump around in time and stuff like that? Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino?
No, Quentin Tarantino is like, he does it a lot too. But also like, yes, Quentin Tarantino. And so like Frank does that. Like Frank does that really well. He just has different scenes he throws at you and it goes well. So then after this, Frank disappears, right? He leaves us.
Yeah.
He goes away for
a part of it is because of like the quote unquote failures or public failures that I feel like he kind of had. Because it was on the Grammys and it was something, I want to say it was SNL.
thought it was SNL too.
Because one of the two he did Bad Religion on. And I remember that. And I remember like it was SNL and he did Bad Religion. Because, they do 2 songs on SNL. So he did one of his more popular songs. Because SNL is something that my dad watches religiously. My dad watches SNL. Just like he did Jeopardy. Rest in peace to Alex Trebek.
Rest in peace to Alex Trebek, man.
I grew up on that man because of my dad.
My family watches Jeopardy a lot. So
my dad watches it and answers every single question correctly. It's actually fucking insane. I hate it. And like one of the things I was working on, like I can't wait till I get lit and I make it. He was gonna be on Jeopardy. Like I was gonna get him on Jeopardy. But he watched SNL, and I remember, and every time it would be an artist that like he knew through me, he would let me know, like, oh yeah, Frank Ocean. I was like, yeah, Frank Ocean's gonna be on SNL. I'm watching it. So those are the ones that I would watch with. And I remember, like, he did his little first song. I want to say it was Pyramids, because that's when John Mayer came. That's staying in the background. Because I want to say he did Pyramid. Yeah, he did Pyramids. So that's when John Mayer popped up in the background playing the little end of the guitar riff that he did in the music. But he did Bad Religion, and it wasn't bad. I just, one of the things that I don't think he necessarily did well on. And I remember like sitting there and explaining to my dad, like, no, you have to listen to the lyrics of the song. You have to understand the significance of the song. Like, he's just one of those. Like, I remember being that representation for him.
You wanted to be like, hey, this is the thing. This is the thing.
No, and I was literally sitting there explaining to him, like, do you understand what he's saying? Like, he's kind of fucking up right now, so just pay attention. Don't pay attention to that, but pay attention to the lyrics. And I'm like, literally, like, as he's singing it, I'm reciting the lyrics. Like, if it brings you to your knees, it's a Bad Religion. And I'm looking at my dad, the most religious person I know, like.
And yeah, that happens to Frank, and he vamooses. He's like, I'm gone. Like, because you're right, the pressure got to him to a certain extent. The contract stuff got to him, which is a huge part. Like, he was in a bad contract, didn't know what to do. And
he was getting in a lot of trouble with stuff like that. Remember he got in that weird beef with Chipotle or something?
Yeah, he was just having a really rough time being famous.
Yeah.
He just had a really rough time being famous. Mm-hmm. So he disappears for a couple years, and he comes back. And when he comes back, he has to get out of his contract. That's kind of what he says, right? This is after 4 years of being like mysteriously gone, which is kind of a long time, but it didn't necessarily feel that long looking back on it, which is really weird because everything feels like 10 years, right? Like a month feels like 10 years now, but looking back on the 4 years that Frank wasn't there, his music was so powerful that it kind of held him over. Mm-hmm. And so 4 years later, he drops Endless, and then the day after drops Blonde.
Right.
Because he wanted to drop Blonde independently. And so he's like, how do I get out of this? And so he drops Endless, but he drops it only on Apple Music at first.
Yep.
And it's a visual album.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why. And that's the thing. I felt like Apple Music at its peak was like the pinnacle of music streaming devices. And it was because of people like Frank Ocean, Drake, and Chance the Rapper.
Yeah.
Because they would drop
Book
things.
Was on there first. Yeah.
They would drop things exclusive. Same thing that Tidal does, but it's more kind of understandable with Tidal, I guess. But like they would drop things exclusively through Apple Music. And I remember Frank Ocean, and at that time, especially because of the height of Channel Orange, it had been so long, quote unquote, because we were used to people giving us an album every year, like motherfucking Rihanna and shit like that. Like, it was huge. And I remember, and it's funny, and it's important to note that Endless was the album that he dropped first, because I think still to this day it's the least popular of the two.
I mean, it's underappreciated because it's underheard, right?
Very much so.
People didn't hear it, and he didn't do any promo for it. It wasn't really a single. It's also a lot of ambient music, in my opinion. Like, it's a lot of music you kind of have in the background.
Some of his most experimental, in my opinion.
Very much so. Very much experimental.
Yeah.
And it's very ambient, and it's like kind of like what's happening, what's going on here, kind of music. So I guess that's why it doesn't do well. But you're right. He does kind of push the boundaries of what he considers his music there.
The visual that he dropped, wasn't it just him like building a staircase or something?
Yeah, it was just him in like a white room, like making some shit. It was to get out of the contract to a certain extent, right? But I think even he had to do it.
It was definitely a stunt.
He had to do it in a way that made it impactful enough that if he went to court, he could be like, no, this is a performance. This is the whole thing. I gave you guys something,
Exactly.
And so then he drops Blonde. And I think Blonde it's such an interestingly complicated album.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think its level of honesty is like what, at the end of the day, everyone connected to, and even people that we wouldn't expect to connect to. That's one of the relations that I do with Blonde, is how many people that were like, this changed my life. Like, most notably being Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt literally said that Blonde is what helped him heal from his divorce from Angelina Jolie.
Which, wow, man, I can't imagine divorcing Angelina Jolie. That's
okay, you know what I'm saying? And he said he literally hit up Frank Ocean to thank him for Blonde helping him heal from his divorce. Like, and this is Brad Pitt interview, like, yeah, man. Just like, I remember that vividly and like screaming, and that's one of the validations that my dad was like, damn, all right, I kind of slept on this nigga that bombed it. I said, maybe I should give him another try. And I was like, yeah, you should. Like,
but Blonde, I think, is by far his most complex album, right? It's 17 songs. It's very much like, you're right, like a lot of people find healing through it, and I think a lot of the younger crowds, like the people directly under us, like the 25-ish, right, people, like they. But
also, it's one of the albums that circulates. Like, there are certain albums that are classics within certain generations, and there are certain albums that are classics within like multiple generations.
And Blonde carries forward.
Channel Orange is ours, Blonde's is everybody's. And it took a while to accept that, but it is. Like, and even for my sister who's 14, like when she does her little TikTok or whatever the fuck, it'll be slowed down, chopped up versions of songs on Blonde.
It'll be Nike, it'll be Ivy, Pink and White, it'll be like Solo.
Pink and White is huge. Also Beyonce, but again, Def Jam.
Yeah, and it'll be Andre 3000 doing rapping with no drums. It's a lot of like that kind of stuff. But what I want to say is like this album is so complex because there's so many emotions packed into so many of these songs, right? And like even the cover art with him holding his head like this.
Oh, and his dyed hair. He had all these niggas with these shortcuts dyeing their hair, motherfucking blonde and pink and green and blue.
He did.
All of them.
And it's just like, I think this album, like you're saying, it propagates forward. And part of the reason is because, you remember Alessia Cara? Like, she covered Ivy, and it was by one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard in my life, right? Still one of my favorite covers of a song. And then there's songs like, Solo. Solo is such a powerful song.
And then Nike dropped first, and it was a visual.
Nike dropped first as visual, and it's probably one of the most remixed songs of all time, right? Everyone shifts and reverbs Nike. Everyone chops up Nike. Everyone chops and screws that song. Like, it's just, this generation saw the word Nike, first of all, and they're crazy.
Period.
They love it. They love Nikes, right?
But after Nike was Solo,
indeed,
for some reason that I remember, like the next, like.
Oh no, after Nike's Ivy, and Solo's further down. After Nike's Ivy, right? Nike's is the first song on all of it, but I think
Nike's is number one.
Yes.
Yeah, and then Ivy comes.
Yeah.
What I like so much about this album is like when I first listened to it, obviously I have my faves. There are certain things that were my faves, like Nike, and Solo. And Pink and White, just because Beyonce, when the album dropped, is one of the first songs you listen to. But this is one of the, not the very first, but this is also one of the first songs that I recall that people being really upset about when artists would feature certain artists and they wouldn't have like a verse or like a hook. It would just be in the background. I want to low-key say, like, I just remember it going like viral to a certain extent where people were pissed that he had a song featuring Beyonce and she was doing the back vocals. Niggas were so upset, but I was like, no, this is great.
Frank, this is exactly what he was gonna do. He was gonna do like a sing off with Beyonce. He's not stupid.
Exactly. And he's been working with this bitch for so motherfucking long, so he was just doing a track for her and was like, hey, in the meantime, can you just like sing this ooh and then go home? And then she was like, yeah, I'll do that for you for free. And like, duh, like that's like duh. And the only artist I can think of that really did shit like that was like Tyler, but I don't feel like people that weren't Tyler stans paid attention to that. It was people like Frank, right? It was people like Frank that were more submerged in pop culture, literally.
Exactly, and
that like had people like, why is Beyonce not singing? She's humming. Are you kidding me? And I was like, no, nigga, that's fucking lit. It's fucking art. Grow the fuck up. So there were songs like that I paid initial attention to, but then songs like Siegfried.
That's a song. And so it gets into the writing of this album, right?
Right.
You want to keep going, or?
I mean, it's just like like, I to this day, I mean, because I was one of the songs when you told me like you were listening to Frank Ocean and getting this melancholy space, and I was like, that's cute. I've been depressed all day, so I've kind of already been in that mental space. But when you texted me that was the moment I was like, let me just play Frank on shuffle. But I was skipping into the songs that I really wanted to hear, and like Siegfried is one of those songs that immediately when I hear it, it's just like
to me that song is Solo, right? And Solo's chorus, which is what I keep referencing, it goes, it's hell on earth and the city's on fire.
Yes,
Inhale, in hell there's heaven. There's a bull and a matador dueling in the sky. Inhale, in hell there's heaven. And when I heard that, I was just like, oh shit. Like I had to sit down and kind of think about,
I'd be like, is this nigga serious?
Like what he meant, and just like, you know, like the world burning around you. Inhale, don't worry, there's heaven. And like, don't worry, if you inhale, like there's double entendres there. There's just everything that you'd want out of a poet is there, right?
Exactly. And I mean, I'm not gonna say that we see that a lot in hip hop, which is kind of why we have this podcast, right? But I don't feel like that was necessarily as translated in pop culture music as it was.
Not the way Frank did it.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it just, I don't know. It just wasn't a thing, but it wasn't a thing for Black people. You would see it in certain alternative music, niggas like Kings of Leon and stuff like that. And you would see it in other like alternative artists that honestly most of my favorite artists were the niggas that sampled these alternative artists. Some of them like Kendrick and Frank Ocean. And honestly, Drake. One of the reasons why I hold on to Drake so long is because he would sample niggas like Little Dragon. And when I think of like people that like lyrically would kind of fuck me up and make me like Google like, what is this nigga talking about? What is he trying to say? What type of metaphors and similes am I like missing and shit? And like that I don't understand. You know, that I like just that went over my head. And like I don't
so many times, right? Because he does this again.
Nobody makes me feel like that. No, again, no shade. Like as like a cis Black man, nobody makes me see that. Like I get that in alternative music. I get that in like country music. I get that in rock music. There were very few moments where I really got that level of it in like R&B since people like Prince.
And he does it again on my second favorite song is Skyline 2, right? Because on the chorus he goes, on comes the evening, gold seeking ends, peace in my hands worth twice than a friend, and two limbs over shoulder carried away, because I'm stronger and the Congo is dim. In comes the morning, in comes the morning. And like you hear that and you're just like, what the fuck did he just say? Right? And you kind of sit there and you're just like, okay, on comes the evening, that means sunset. Gold seeking end means like, you know, the sun, like the tendrils of the sunset coming off. It's the end of the day. Nothing gold can stay. Pieces in my hands worth twice than a friend. So the sun setting means about like, you know, like this is where our friendship ends. The whole idea of like a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Better to stick with what you know than what you don't. And it's like he does this all together at once. And you're just like, shit. Skyline 2 and Solo are my favorite songs off this album. And they kind of change the way I think about how good writing can be, especially in this vein.
Yeah. And I think of people, and this isn't to say that they were directly inspired by this person, but I was just talking to somebody else earlier today, and I was talking about how much I love the resurgence of like certain artists that happens right after all the Grammy nominations come out. And I've been seeing that happen for Victoria Monet.
Yeah, shout out to Victoria Monet.
Shout out, and remember, and you know, I felt like we did talk about her album, whatever, that came out earlier this year, because it was fucking great. As great as it was, we talked about how we feel like it wasn't as personable as it should have been, but it was still phenomenal music from beginning to end. But it was cool to see after her Grammy nominations and her very most recent like baby announcement or whatever, being like, oh, this bitch is lit. It's like, no, this bitch is fucking lit. But one of the reasons why I really connected to her, like, number one, her album is like understanding that like she's a great songwriter. Her pen is fucking crazy. But her pen is so crazy, like she had been writing for people like Ariana Grande for years. Yeah. The only reason we have an artist to this day like Ariana Grande is because people like her have been writing for them for so long, and then they finally take that leap of creating their own artistry.
No,
and really championing that. And Frank Ocean was the first person I did that with, but I like how familiar it feels now to be like, oh no, I know that bitch. She wrote for her, but she's doing her own shit. Everybody needs to praise her. Like everybody, period. Do it now. And he did that. That was Frank.
He's the blueprint. I think he gave artists a lot of hope in the way like he expresses himself and the way he navigates the industry. It shows that there's creative ways to do it, right? we should probably wrap this because we are getting quite long in terms of the episode. What else do you want to talk about in terms of Frank? Because I know we can go on forever. I think you and I can talk about Frank for hours.
I mean, yeah. I didn't think about this being an issue when we started recording, but it's actually really cute. No, I mean, I think I kind of touched on everything as far as like the music goes. It's just more things that I can quote and quote for like ever.
So talking just real quick about his Lucy's, Lens, Provider, Chanel, the 2 Spanish songs, Cayendo and Dear April.
Chanel was my shit for a while.
I think Chanel was everybody's shit,
I was like, okay, you bad fucking bitch. And I just like and I don't even think he necessarily intended it this way, because I think his mask is very much like open bisexual, but I don't think that's his internal. But I can only make that from a judgment. I don't know this person. But one of the reasons why I like Chanel, and I feel like it blew up so bad, and so many people connected to it, it was just like, it was such a, niggas don't have bisexual anthems, which is just funny. Niggas have hella hetero anthems, niggas have hella gay anthems, but like, the niggas that'd be like, nah, I kind of fuck with you, bro. It's not really a lot of niggas that make kind of songs like that without it feeling and sounding very perverted. I remember telling one of my homegirls, like, Chanel was the first bisexual anthem. Like, niggas actually accept.
That's a good way to think about it, actually. Yeah, I never thought about that.
It's a motherfucking bisexual anthem. So like, those are the things that I kind of fuck with, but.
I think all of my favorite Lucy's, I like that he has like that biking with Tyler and Jay-Z, and that
I was
Jay-Z,
just about to say that.
I also like the fact that Jay-Z got washed by Tyler, which I think is like, sorry Terrence, I know you're probably listening and like fuming somewhere, but like,
it's the truth.
He got washed.
He did. Like, and that's when Tyler really started turning up on these features, and I don't think ways that niggas expected him to, because if you're a Tyler listener, you expect songs like Rusty, where Tyler really gets in his rapper bag.
Exactly, yeah.
Go off. He's not gonna do his rapper bag all the time. He's gonna get into
But with like
bag.
biking, like it was like the perfect verse for that song, right?
It was.
And he matched the energy so well. And it's
I
interesting,
feel like he does that with Freddie. He does that with a lot of people, but that song is kind of where I started. I was like, oh, okay. You better match the vibe.
I don't know why Jay is on that song, but I'm happy that Frank has a Jay feature. Like,
I mean,
know.
I just think because of his association.
Well, no, I know that. But I'm like, I don't know why he chose this song for Jay-Z to be on,
why
right? Because
not?
Because like,
I mean, that's the throwaway you drop, just because Jay-Z's
Jay's on it. That's
you know
true.
what I'm saying? That could be
because Frank gave Jay-Z, I think, one of the best choruses of all time on the Watch the Throne album. What's that song with Frank and Kanye? Yeah, exactly.
And remember that music video that dropped, and it was like reverse.
Exactly, yeah.
Literally reverse racism. We'll never forget it.
That was I think one of the hardest choruses I've ever heard in my life. First of all, and it's just easy to, it's so memorable. Like, what's king to a god, da 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 da. And so I was thinking like Jay should come a little harder for what he gives Frank, given the what Frank has given him. But you're right. It is the right song to drop as a Lucy. My favorite two are probably though his most recent ones where he's singing in Spanish, because they're great songs to walk to, like Dear Cayendo and like the April one. Okay. And so he dropped them during quarantine, and so it's been great to use those to walk to, because they're just very walkable songs. So that's just a personal thing. Follow Tunes and Trees, guys. I take pictures of pretty trees and post them, flowers and shit.
Love nature. As far as like my Lucy's go, I would say like 2, just because you threw out 2, would probably be DHL. That's probably what. Oh, what do you say? Hair swimming like it's probably noodles. I was like, let me pull it. I was like, oh, like that's when he was getting into his trade bag, and that's one of the reasons why I like Steve Lacy so much, because he really would like sit there and be like, you blowing my mind, boy. Now I'll be like, yes, you blowing my mind, boy.
Does Frank is, I think, a representative, and like you can speak to this better than I can. I think for a lot of like the LGBTQ sort of scene in hip hop to a certain extent, right? Like he's kind of like their guy, right? But like I know he hasn't always been the best of representatives. Like his party, like that he threw, had mostly white people or something.
Yes. Okay. So yes, Frank. Yes, wholeheartedly. And that's one of my favorite kind of things. It's like as far as the Black community goes, when it comes to Black LGBT community, the Black community sees certain people as like the pinnacle of kind of that, and that's one of the things that Frank Ocean had to take and accept when he dropped Channel Orange, because it dropped in the UK first, and that's when it came out, like Forrest Gump. And that was the other song I was gonna say. The only song that inspires me as much as everything else is Forrest Gump, because I came up with the most fire video treatment for Forrest Gump, and I've always wanted to do it, but I said I was not gonna do it unless he did it with me. And at the time when it came out, I was like, oh, he's reachable. I can do that. Now it's not the motherfucking case. But I'm holding on to that treatment.
One day.
Nigga, it's motherfucking crazy. But I remember in the UK when Forrest Gump came out and it being like, whoa, this nigga said you run through my mind, boy. What does that mean? And literally it was because of Twitter. That everybody in the US was like, whoa, is this nigga about to be on some gay shit? The album dropped. This nigga was like, whoa, is this nigga on some gay shit? And he literally dropped on Tumblr how he had to be like, yeah, I kind of had to sit here and contemplate, was I trying to be on that gay shit? And I can't.
Oh yeah, that letter. I forgot about that letter.
He dropped that letter on Tumblr.
He did drop that.
And at that point, I was still on Tumblr. And I remember he dropped it like, yeah, I had to sit here and contemplate, like, was I about to talk about the fact that I was on that gay shit? And I was like, yeah, now's the time. I be on that gay shit, suck my dick. And I mean, a lot of people came at him for it. A lot of people came at him for it and say it was a publicity stunt. A lot of people like Chris Brown. A lot of people said that, you know, if it was not for that, Channel Orange wouldn't be what it is, and he wouldn't have got any of those Grammy nominations had he not been open about the fact. But I feel like he got outed. That's how I feel. I feel like he got outed, and not even intentionally, but like the UK was like, "Hey, you sucking dick."
I mean, he made his music, and I think people interpreted his music,
how they
and
did.
that's kind of what happens, you know, like. And again, all respect to Frank and his privacy. I'm glad that he lives in his truth and comes
Period.
out.
And it's not our business. That's why I say I do feel like he was outed. I don't feel like that was his moment to accept or talk about or to claim this.
It's just sort of the internet pressure got to him, more or less. It's like, hey, I got to talk about this now, so I'm going to talk about it.
Yeah, especially because like this shit came out before this shit came out, and you niggas are already talking about not fucking with me. Unless I
gotta be real about it. That makes sense. So I had never thought about it from that perspective. So thank you.
I'm gonna address it, and he did. It was very cute. Like, yeah, fell in love with a guy once. Mind your business. Or suck my dick. And I remember reading it on Tumblr, being like, "That's it. Like, that's it.
No,
that's it.
That's
grow up. Grow the fuck up."
I remember that letter. That letter was like beautifully worded. It kind of changed the way I think a lot of. Not me personally, but I know it definitely changed the culture of straight people towards gay people when he did that to a certain extent, right?
Because it was this whole grapulation of, can I fuck with this nigga's art and accept the fact that this nigga may be sucking dick on the side? And then, you know, and mind you, all the queer people are like, duh, do you know how many niggas whose music you listen to unknowingly who be sucking dick? Just get over it.
And to circle back, like he was the first, not the first artist to be Black and gay and to be amazing, but the first person to, I think, be open about it to the level that he had to be. Right.
And I think it's important to notice that it wasn't even a voluntary thing.
Exactly. Right. And I think, it's very important to highlight that, because it changes the way you have to accept what happened to him.
It changes the way cis Black men have to go about the art. It changes the way Black people have to go about the art, especially when you're not heterosexual.
It's interesting, yeah. And I just, again, I don't have the range to talk about this, but I will say from a straight dude's perspective, it definitely changes the way that I think straight dudes approach music. And I think when we get to the Tyler episode, oh man, I can tell you about friends who love Tyler when they realized he was.
Oh my God!
When they realized he was gay, they changed because they had to change. It broke them mentally,
right? And they couldn't fuck with it anymore as much as they wanted to fuck with it.
And they had to realign their political and social beliefs.
And it was like, you were proving my motherfucking point.
And it was kind of amazing because people became progressive because Tyler, the creator, became progressive and grew in love to himself.
They did, and I feel like Frank Ocean was the segue to that, and that's why I feel like people like Steve Lacy could be as open as they did and just say in a Fader interview, like, yeah, I might be bi, I just don't like Black men, which is an issue within itself that we will address at a different day. Not lost on that, but I think it's people like Frank Ocean that has Steve like, all right, yes, I say dude every now and then. I might suck a dick or two. It's just not Black dick because, you know, colorism and racism is still a thing. But, like, yeah, mind your business. That would not be a thing had it not be for Frank Ocean.
It's very interesting. But I think, all right, what are our closing thoughts before we get way too far into this?
I mean, Frank Ocean is that nigga and he changed my life.
I think I can agree with that, and that's more or less where we can keep it.
Period. Thank you, and thank you for inspiring the rest of these niggas, and even like the comparisons that a lot of artists get, whether or not they subject themselves to it. Like people like Giveon and shit like that. Like whether or not you inspire these niggas or not, thank you.
And for making the lane. I think you've...
You know, thank you.
Yeah,
thank
for
you.
making the
That's
lane.
it.
Thank you for making the lane. Also, thank you for helping, I think, a lot of straight men become more emotionally intelligent, right?
Period.
I think some of my emotional intelligence that I have now, I owe to listening to Frank Ocean, which is kind of a sad thing to say because maybe I wasn't raised the right way or maybe I didn't evolve in the right way. But at the same time,
the growth that's happening now.
You have to acknowledge the people who helped you out a lot. And so I'd like to thank Frank Ocean for some of that. But yeah, so that's been another hip hop podcast. Tay really doesn't want to do a promo for the Trap Factory, I guess.
So you're not going to do this promo real quick? Is we done?
Oh no, what do you think? I need
You might as well and go ahead and fuck with the Trap Factory. You know, you can follow us at 4331 Gallatin Street. You know what I'm saying? In the art districts of Hyattsville. Okay, let's talk about it. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? Your visual needs, your artist development needs, your recording, mixing, and mastering needs. Niggas got that. You know, we socially distance, we wear our masks, we sanitize on a consistent basis. And unfortunately, there are not more than 3 or 4 at this point right now. I know the CDC regulates 5, but we don't do that shit. It's about 3 or 4 niggas allowed in the studio right now. So if you're a group, wait on it. But if you're not, holla at us.
And because we have a lot of international listeners, I don't know if Tay is still taking mixing and mastering requests from people. Like if you can send them, mixing and mastering stuff. Okay.
And if they're beats, and just like we have multiple engineers, even ones that aren't necessarily in the studio, but the ones that we are associated with. There are people that are looking for beats, things of that nature. Just hit us up on the regular email, hit us up on the regular phone number, follow us at the Trap Factory.
And if you like the beat in the background, it's Destiny on it, so hit her up.
Exactly, and that's one of the artists I was about to plug. So exactly, you hear our beats on the beginning and end, whatever it is, hit up DSNY. That's my name.
All right, y'all. Peace and love.